elevating rural and urban development as a central pillar for his vision of 2026 to 2031 as a term. But after nearly 4 decades in power, it begs the question, are the promises being met or are they raising dust? Why now? What has worked after 40 years? What has failed after 40 years? And is infrastructure being used as a tool of national integrity or simply a political vehicle? Well, this morning we're going to be interrogating the politics behind developments, not the slogans. Allow me to introduce to you my panelists this morning. To my immediate left, I do have Robert Webale, NRM chairperson. This is in Nakawa, B2. Today. Yes. Good morning to you. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Madam.
How are you?
Life on
You've had the president and the visits and things around Nakawa moving at a fast pace as we entered the year. What does that look like and what does it shape Nakawa for?
Thank you, Madam Priscilla. If Robert Webber is my name once again, Chairman Nakwatu Sub-County, the former Deputy Arisimbali State. The President, first of all, I want to thank also the people of Nakawa yesterday. The overwhelming support they gave our national chairman, who is Afla Kabeara. When you saw the numbers there, I think they talk about themselves. Those that have been saying that they didn't have no support, I think they witnessed what happened in Nakawa yesterday. I want to thank the national chairman, our people in Nakawa, for the support, the turn up. And the turn up should turn into the votes. Let's go and vote on the 15th.
Okay.
Well, when you look at people have been talking about the 40 years, talking about this, but there's a lot to be discussed in terms of infrastructure. Like we are talking about infrastructure. We'll
discuss that in a little bit. Allow me to introduce our new panelist on this set. That is Mr. Sefo Makaroli, a PFF candidate for Busiro East Member of Parliament. Good morning to you and Happy New Year.
Good morning, Priscilla. I'm exceedingly delighted and immensely honored to be hosted with you and to share with you on this powerful platform of NTV.
Yeah.
I'm more than delighted.
If we might ask, why did you choose to join the race?
Well, of course, the answers are quite many. But of course, as a citizen of Uganda, with all the age requirements and all the academic requirements, I'm exceedingly capable of being able to, actually more than above, to be able to stand and contest in the race of Busiro East.
Okay.
No other place but Busiro East, not Chagwe, where I'm born, but Busiro East, the core of the constituency of Uganda.
Okay. You know that scripture says over and above and beyond. That's exactly what you were applying. Okay, all right. Well, it's a pleasure to have you. Then we also do have Advocate of the High Court, Ronald Dylan Kalwani. You're most welcome, Councillor.
Thanks so much for having us, Priscilla. And again, the discussion that has been held this morning is right for the public to discuss, but also to draw the line, what has been done, what is to be done, and what is the missing link in the infrastructure of this country. But we must also, of course, point a picture which is overall, that cuts across the divide of the country, as we look at these issues. But they're very important issues, and indeed, it's the right topic for us to discuss this morning. I'm delighted to be here.
Okay. All right. Webale, allow us to start with you. The President has been talking so much about rural-urban development as one of his priorities in his next term. And Ugandans have had these commitments similar before roads, industrial parks that he has been committing to in different parts of the country, power lines and markets, to mention but a few. When we look at it from his perspective, or from the ruling government's perspective, what does rural-urban development look like and what is it?
Thank you, Madam Priscilla, and all the Ugandans who are in the out there. It's a collective responsibility as a party. When the national chairman of Afla Kabeara of NRM talks about the infrastructure, the piped water, electricity, the markets and all these. These are the ingredients that they can attract development within the urban centers. Because if you want to connect, you cannot transport your products from this market, maybe moving from Banda to other place, without a good road network. when we look at like where I come from, Nakawa, if you go the roads within, but even if you discuss about the whole country, the country, you cannot think about development. I mean, political centers, these are when you look at the whole country actually, Uganda has been now able to have 6,306 tarmac kilometers road.
Okay.
Now, that's an instrument of the country to develop, and that's how you can talk. You cannot discuss that we are going to be a leader when people cannot connect themselves towards the development. Urban centers, or rather all over the country, whether Mbale State, Arua State, or everything, the first thing that is the core must be infrastructure. And any flag bearer or any political party must have a yardstick. How will our people access services for their benefit? And that's why President now, when we go to Entebbe Highway, there are many flyovers here, go to Entebbe, go to Banda, go to Kawempe. People used to see these things as films. Now it's practical in Kampala here and other parts of the country, in the 7 cities. That's why it's a core for us. How will somebody from Banda or Kawempe transport his products from there to the other market of Nakasero? They must have a good road. They must have clear transport means. When we look at the electricity, we must have enough electricity in the city that things can run well. And as the president is saying, that's the core now to ensure that these urban centers grow expeditiously. But of course, like we have said, like the president himself have said, that if you have a good road or good electricity or health center, 4 or 3, anything, our constitution now, much as you can have those, but you must have money in your pocket. That's what we're creating wealth. People must have some money because you don't sleep on that road the following morning.
Okay.
Poverty, you'll find, as we say, that the poverty you left in the morning, you'll find in the evening at home. But the core is, this service must be there. You must have schools in the urban centers. You must have electricity. You must have piped water. And the piped water, like Mzee was coming, we had a meeting with the manager, like for us in Akawa, of water within our area of jurisdiction. We checked, people have water. Water is life. A government which is campaigning to lead the country, if you cannot provide water, you cannot have to provide roads, how will you go and vote? How will you transport people to other places? How will the materials arrive to the areas? Because some people want power. Yeah, you want power, fine. They are saying NRM is a bad party, has done nothing in the 40 years. But people are moving well. They can access Kawempe, they can access Nakawa, they can access Kampala Central freely. Within 3 minutes, you drive from Kawempe, you drive this way. And those are the core issues that the NRM government has concentrated to ensure people.
Currently, it's not within 3 minutes. The many traffic lights that you put there make it, can even take it up to 40 minutes just within those corners that you have placed. So
I agree with
it gets worse with the time.
I agree with you in terms of traffic, because that's the type of development that people own. You may find some of these members of parliament own 10 vehicles. That's the kind of development, the gains we're trying to protect. But how do we now we have the vehicles. Okay. How do we protect those vehicles now?
All right.
How do you reduce the traffic jams? The Honor of Katumba Mala is working on that expeditiously.
Okay. Let me go to the candidates. Now, what would be your understanding of infrastructure development, especially rural urban development or urban to rural development? And then your assessment of, one, the 40 years of NRM and what they've been able to do of infrastructure development. Has it been satisfactory to you as a beneficiary or not beneficiary? But also give it to me from the broader perspective of, as a country, ever since gaining independence, it's been 60 years down the road. When you compare to other countries that gained independence around the same time, the development does not really tally that much.
Every government is assessed as successful or not on the basis of its aspirations and the capacity to achieve those aspirations carefully. The NRM, since 1986, has been developing a narrative up to now that things are moving well and they have done a lot of work. As I said, the aspirations of the NRM must be commensurate to the achievements on the ground. 40 years is not a small period of time. 40 years is quite a lot. It's a full generation. I'm 47 years. I've seen NRM more than I saw in UPC. So basically, when NRM talks about this achievement, they are discussing issues relating to how much they have been able to do on ground commensurate to the amount of time available. My brother has talked about roads. He has talked about 6,600 kilometers of roads. The district roads in Uganda are about, rather, the total volume of roads in Uganda is about 159,000 kilometers. And national roads are about 14% of that total, which is around 20,000 kilometers. NRM says actually it has been able to, the figure is around 7,000. When you look at 7,000 kilometers of roads out of the 20,000, that's around 33% of the roads which have now been tarmacked, which is not bad. But if you look at 7,000 in relation to 40 years, then the figure might not be able to give you a good result. That would mean that 7,000 over 40, NRM has been able to try to, at least every year, to have around 153, 170 kilometers of roads tarmacked every year. That number is not so good. 40 years and 40 national budgets. So the narrative might be so good that in the political economy of resource distribution, NRM gives the impression that indeed they are doing good work, and the roads actually many, and they're showing the picture, the images, and they talk about it positively. But when you look at the roads and other various infrastructure in relation to the amount of time, then there might be questions. So I might be able to say the issue is, my conclusion is that there is a good amount of underperformance wrapped in a seemingly good picture, but when you look at it critically, you might say, no, I think performance is not so good. So I want to believe that rather than say that there's a road, there are hospitals, and then make some good amount of positive noise or necessary noise on the achievements, it would be good for us to be able to look at how we structure and how we show exactly how much has been done commensurate to the amount of time available. Because time is very important. Sometimes we forget that indeed these roads are just 7,000 kilometers. Sometimes we forget that when you divide 7,000 divide by 40, you might get the figure is very small. Sometimes we forget that poverty is actually a real fact in Uganda. Sometimes we forget that unemployment is an issue. But when one achievement is actually attained, then the message actually given to the people of Uganda is that we have done this, so give us a vote. That might not be so. That might not be so honest. Although from a political point of view, it gives you the chance to be able to speak for your achievements. So I believe for me, there's an amount of underperformance.
At 47 years of age, what was the Uganda you envisioned 40 years back?
Well, of course, I was not advantaged enough to envision a Uganda when I was a young boy, or a young man in a million junior boys. I, of course, have to assess Uganda on the basis of the aspiration they have been able to show us. The one thing I need to know, and I know, is that NRM has been moving in phases. Between 1986 and 2010, they relied on the 10-point program. Then between 1990 and 2000, they relied on the Poverty Eradication Action Program, PEP. Then they went into the Poverty Alleviation Fund. They had documents. When they launched the Vision 2010, they had now a scripted document that would be able to guide their development process. You could say that now that was a very good shift from something that was a bit haphazard, something which was coherent. And you can see that Vision 2040 was divided into 6 phases, NDP 1 to NDP 6. But still the problem is performance. How much of NDP 1 did NRM achieve? How much of NDP 2 and 3? On 19th December, when they are closing NDP 3, government said, regrettably, that out of the projected 80% achievement of NDP 3, they had only scored 60%. Of course, when somebody makes a personal confession that I've only scored 60, he's actually trying to say, admittedly, I've not been good enough. 5 budgets, 60%. You might be able to say logically, and even honestly, that I think that is not a good achievement. But of course, you don't have to be so critical enough. But logically speaking, you might say that's not good enough, because 60 could be 58%. When you perform below 60, below 75, I think you are not good enough. As a teacher, of course, he knows. I wouldn't say that my student is good if he scores 60. I would be okay if the student gets 75%. I would be okay to say. So the programs are there, the literature is available, Vision 2040, NDP 1, NDP 6, then the policies, the strategic framework, they are there, but now the speed, the pace of achievements in place is a bit...
Let's go to the teacher you've made reference to. The distinction between what the NRM government has always committed to doing and you know, the paperwork, the strategies being very good, but many of those that we have interacted with have come to the blunt point that implementation is where they draw the line in terms of, you know, fully committing to what they have put out there. And you've heard from Weber here what he has mentioned. So I want to find out from you, Council, if rural-urban imbalance remains severe today and moving forward, is there an admission of policy failure at this point that we can state?
Thank you so much, Priscilla. But again, you see, from what Mr. Kola just stated, 60%. If you're sitting an exam and you score 60%, I don't think you're a bad student. I think for me, you're fairly good. And there is no policy that you can score 100%. I think it is just fair that we give credit where it is due. And looking at the journey of 40 years, he's 47, me I'm 40. So in other words, me, I have lived through the regime. I've gone up through the regime. So if you look at the infrastructure development that the NRM regime has put into place, you're going to appreciate the fact that the ease of doing business is at the core of that infrastructure. So what is the connectivity of a farmer to the city? I think that those are the underlying questions that we should be answering. What is the connectivity of electricity to a factory in Bundibujo? So we must put it across the spectrum and not just looking only at the urban areas. So if, for example, you're looking at the ease of doing business, which is of course the cost of transportation, you're going to find out that you can now cut across the entire country on tarmac roads. You can move from here and go via Jinja, via Kumit, Soroti, and back to Lira, and back to Kampala on a tarmac road. So I think for me, we should be looking at it from the point of ease of doing business to the population, and of course, not to underscore what has been done. If you're realistic enough, of course, he's saying the kilometers that have been tarmacked are 6,000 and something. But again, look at the hardships this country has gone through for the last 40 years. We should be able enough to appreciate what has so far been done and what is to be done. Of course, I'm not saying, and I must put it right, I'm not saying the achievements are really 75 or 100%. What I'm saying is that so far what we have on the ground in terms of the ease of doing business, farmers, industrialists can transport. For example, look at what he has said, my colleague here, in terms of water connectivity. I come from Kawale district. And if you go through Fort Portal up to my village, which is 40 kilometers from the district, I have water, piped water. We have electricity. So I think the narrative that the infrastructure development has not been equated with the number of years the government has been in place, I think for me it is downplay what has so far been done. Yet there's so much to achieve.
So it's not that they're downplaying what has so far been achieved. I think Ugandans do really, really appreciate how much has been achieved so far. But as you have said, this 60% student has performed fairly well. But if they have been a good student, an S student, or when they came in, they had potential of being an S student, and now they're coming through and they're giving you C's, that it definitely does not leave you the same as the teacher of that student. And that's the lenses through which the people are actually analyzing and assessing NRM and infrastructure development. That when they came in, the commitments that they said and the promises that they made to the Ugandans at the time, 1986 and coming onwards, these are commitments that they gave a picture that they would happen in the shorter time possible than 40 years. So that is the assessment, that's the pedestal upon which people are saying, but no, you can't have come to Ntoroko, you can't be coming to northern Uganda and you're promising us the same thing, cycle in, cycle out, election in, election out, but there are no actual visible, tangible ground realities.
Again, you see, what we would call development that has been accelerated has other factors which are intertwining. For example, what is our tax-based collection that supports that development? That is another issue that we must ask ourselves. So whereas it takes quite to be an A student, again, one who has scored 60%, for me, in the years that the government has been in place, it's not to be underscored. But I'm not saying that they have scored.
Okay, let me revise the question. What for the 60% to
Yes.
take, now the 40%, what could have hindered them achieving the 100%? So where is that 40%?
Implementation. And there's several factors that basically hinder implementation. And one of them is corruption. Well, is it a fact that there are issues of corruption which hinder development? It is true. There are issues that hinder development. For example, you understand that there's so much delays in procurement in terms of these issues. So you look at it from that perspective that as much as the government would want to implement so much of these infrastructure developments, what is the underlying factor that is hindering this development? Number one, we have corruption. Number two, the budget itself may not be enough to give us room to do all the roads, or maybe to expand the network as we would want. So there are other underlying issues. How about policy issues? What are the priorities in terms of which roads must be worked on first in terms of development? Look at Kampala now, the CBD. The road network has been really scaled up. So there is room for improvement, but again, we must say that the underlying issues that start first of all with our leaders, which they must put into consideration. What are the priority that they must look at in terms of these infrastructure developments? Which areas must they first give concentration? Are they the urban areas or the rural areas? And what I've seen now from, for example, in terms of road infrastructure, almost every city has been tarmacked. And I think many of them are also still in part of the program to be tarmacked. So I think for me, from the perspective of what has so far been done, not so bad, but what is yet to be done is the issue now. So in protecting the gains, I think some of the fundamental issues that the president must now put at the core of the next 5 years is ensuring that the road networks are further expanded, and again, also fulfilling most of the promises he has been giving us, because what we have been now going on along is the promises.
I'll come back to you. I hope, Robert, you're taking all of this in. Allow me to return to Senfuma, who gave us the 60%. When you were giving us the 60% over, you have a response to it? Okay, when you were giving us the 60%, of course, now you must give us the 40%, and as to why the NRM government has failed to achieve that 40% in these 40 years. And really, how much time will it take them to now also achieve the 40%?
Thank you so much. I think I want to begin, first of all, from a point of caution. When you set targets to develop as a person, at a personal level, you do not have any sense of self-tolerance. You don't have any sense of self-pity. You set standards that are so high so that you can be able to achieve them at any cost. That is what the development process says. If, for instance, I set my goals for this year and I said I must be a member of parliament, I'm not saying I'm going to work for 24 hours a day. I might even say I'm going to work 48 hours a day, because I'm setting a very difficult target, unrealistic, but it must be achieved. A certain level of complacence and contentment hovers around the air when people are discussing the achievements of ANR in 40 years. That complacence is what gives us the sense of feeling that indeed I think we have done enough. That brings slowness in where things are achieved at some point.
That we should be satisfied with what has been done.
Yeah, because you see, this is a country, it is not a personal entity, it is a country. You have over 45 million people, and you must be able to set targets that do not give you a chance to rest, because you have all the resources, the institutions, and everything. You have all the laws and policies. If there's an obstacle and the law requires an amendment, amend it. If you said that Kampala is in the hands of the opposition and you don't like it, then please bring the KCC Act. When you bring it and then 15 years, nothing is done, there's the proportional change in achievement with the KCC Act in place, which gives sense administrative control, and then there isn't much difference. So I think when you have government, you have the capacity to be able to bring about development, because you have the structure with you and then you have the power. I think I still insist that the rate of development, not so bad. I want to appreciate NRM for one, being able to give us political stability for 40 years. Yeah. That is something I don't take for granted. Yoweri Kaguta Museveni has been able to achieve that, and of course the history of Uganda will be able to talk about that. Because 1960 to 1996 was very bad times. We just don't want to talk about that history. So, but 40 years of stability, of course for northern Uganda it may not be 40, is not something you just talk about and take for granted. It is good. Stability is good for economic growth, it's good for business, it's good for taxation, and those are very strong achievements. But when we come to the ground, the realization of the real physical infrastructure, I think you need to speed up race. I want to say that the biggest constraint has been corruption. When you lose 10 trillion every year 10 trillion shillings, then that is too much. 10 trillion means that you can be able to deal with the poverty in Uganda, in just half of the poverty in Uganda. If we had 10 trillion shillings and committed to fight poverty, half of the poverty in Uganda would actually be dealt with. Right, half of the poverty. So if we have around 7 million people who are poor, 10 trillion can be able to save them out of poverty. So it is too much. Corruption must be dealt with, and it's one of the biggest weevils disturbing this government.
Okay.
You cut me short, but of course, let me give him a chance to.
Robert, so as one that is representing the NRM government at this table, there's a lot that you have to defend against what has been submitted by the two gentlemen, though from their perspective, they seem to give some yellow marks to the NRM for a job well done credit.
I can speak with confidence that I want to appreciate my colleagues. Even at home, there are priorities. A government in power, they must have priorities. When the NRM government took power, the priority number one was to stabilize the country. And that's why there's peace everywhere. Like we have said earlier, we can't take peace for granted in this country. Without peace, we can't be here. Without peace, we can't put a market. Now, when His Excellency the President and the team took over the government of this country, I mean the power of this country, the concentration now was to ensure the country is peaceful. Another challenge in this country was the poisonous elements of tribalism, religious sectors, and ABCD. Uganda is now moving as one as a country. And that's why we are now looking at all these things, how to achieve them. In terms of development, my brother, even Roma Kane was not built in one day. Like Mzee has already said, and all people of this country, we appreciate the challenges of corruption, the challenges of this, but look at the achievements. Because we look at peace, we look at why the population has increased, we talk about unemployment and other issues here. It is because of the core issues of immunization. The government is concerned to see that our children shouldn't die. The population has gone high. What do? We have only, I think we have only 48,000 clerical jobs in this country. But now, those are the people who go through up-to-test, public service, and ABCD. But look at the factories. If my records are not clear, if you look at the records, the number of factories in this country, Mbale alone has 75 factories. Mbale State, under the
Industrial Park.
Industrial Park and others. So, the issue, even the KCC here, yesterday we were sharing with the ED, when Mzee was having the rally in the cover. She's constrained with the budget, depending on looking at the population, the demands of the city. But I can assure that the country is moving well. I can assure that, well, they're saying 40 years, it's okay. But 40 years, if you look at only the communication of this country, communication, mobile phones, from 23,000 mobile phones, we now have 18.2 million mobile phones in the whole country. What do we look at? The country is moving steadily. And that's what we're saying. Give us a contract to continue doing where we're in from.
But in giving you contract to continue what you want to do, you are priding in the increase in achievements for the NRM government, but somehow it really correlates with the increase in corruption. So we might as well say maybe stop increasing the development so that we can manage the corruption fast. Because if we're losing that much money, if you do the mathematics over 40 years, okay, let's just say the last 15 years, that's 15 trillion. I mean, that's 150. Trillion that you are losing, which 150 can clear how many budgets in how many financial years to be able to achieve everything to 100% to the dot. That does not tally for some Ugandans. How do you explain that?
Anybody from Kabongo to Kisoro knows that themselves is not sleeping on that issue. The president is sleeping on that issue. I don't want to mention names of ministers and presidents who have, vice president or ABC who has been arrested. I can assure you, if the NRM government was able to defeat Konyi, and all these people have been causing security. The core now is corruption. And I can assure you, you have been enjoying, I don't want to mention names of ministers, some of them are my senior leaders.
Don't mention them because it's not a secret.
Now,
the whole world knows the ministers you're referring to.
Now,
so please feel free to mention them.
Most of these people are with the government has been arresting them. They have been charged in court. The advocate here can be testimony. And that's the commitment. Like I told the government.
The advocate, how many have been charged against corruption? How many corruption cases has the government won over its own workers?
Just to help my colleague. There has been a very good initiative by government to fight corruption.
Yes.
And I think the IGG is doing a good job, and the DPP and other
IGG's job stops at reporting and evaluating how much government is losing.
I think we must have an element where we have an anti-corruption policy at almost every state organ. For example, look at JELOS. They developed an anti-corruption policy. Can we take this anti-corruption policy to other government agencies and departments so that the fight for corruption begins from the core and not from the periphery? Because if you're going to fight the corruption from the sidelines and you're not being in, then it becomes a problem.
No, they were in. They did the corruption work. That was translated as them being in
that's not enough. That's not enough.
For them, that was a
no,
message.
it's not enough. For example, what JELOS put in place can actually be, even police, by the way, is under JELOS. So those anti-corruption policies that they've put in place, if they are well implemented, we can actually see a very, very good decline in corruption. But above that, for me, it begins on the personal level. If you're patriotic enough and you love this country, you see even from the LOC1 chairperson, corruption begins at that level, at the LOC1 level.
But the home.
I don't know whether in the home we are corrupt, but for me, at the LOC1 chairperson, if you look at the LOCs, where we come from, what initiative has been taken from that level to fight corruption? So you're going to find that on a bare minimum, if we can put up an anti-corruption policy, starting from government parastatals, departments, which have to be implemented within those parastatals, it goes a long way actually in helping us fight this vice.
Now, let me ask you, whose job is it to implement? Because every one of these government leaders says, as long as we implement, whose job is it to
begins
implement?
with us ourselves, the
because
citizens.
At some point in this country, they were telling us, now, you citizens should be the one to report the corruption. But
Absolutely.
You report the corruption, you disappear. You report the corruption, your businesses are affected. You report the corruption, you're the one who is treated as the bad guy.
But you see, Priscilla, it actually begins from us as citizens.
And the one who has stolen said, no, just simply return and retain your position of leadership, of power, of authority, of signature.
Corruption is stemming not only from government actors, but from individual Ugandans. That Ugandan who wants to go to a government entity and feels he is privileged is actually frustrating corruption. But even you ask drivers, just look at us people who are driving on the road. How many times has traffic stopped you and you say, Afande, please let me go, have lunch?
So between the government and the citizen, whose job is it to implement
the
corruption policy you're referring to?
Government must implement the law. But we as citizens must also equally be in place to obey that law and also not facilitate corruption.
I mean, obedience is easy as long as there's terms and conditions. There will be consequences, which are the law addresses. You know, obedience to it as citizens cannot be that hard.
Corruption is a state-generated political technique. I
differ from entirely.
Allow me to
I differ from entirely.
The moment NRM dispenses with and gets rid of corruption, it will collapse. It will collapse.
What? Pardon?
The moment NRM deals with corruption and does away with it, it will collapse.
No, not at all.
Uganda has 4 institutions that are basically the forefront of the fight against corruption. Institution number 1 is the State House Anti-Corruption Unit, the Office of the Auditor General, the Directorate of Ethics and Integrity, and the Inspectorate of Government. 4 institutions are dealing with
even the DPP.
Even the DPP. Now, if we indeed have all these institutions, and they have enough political goodwill to fight corruption, these are appointments, some of which come from the president directly, then of course we should be able to know that they have the power and method to deal with this problem. 10 trillion shillings every year, Uganda, 10 trillion shillings.
Does not pain the government to lose.
It is very painful. This is too much money. If you look at this money commensurate to the public debt, my God, you might be disheartened when you get this figure. So it looks like it is part of the oil that must be able to grease the palms of the NRM system. If it is part of the oil, then of course it must be able to stay. When you make political statement that of course it will be better for us to have this money invested in Uganda or retained in Uganda, even if it's money from corruption, then of course it means they're trying to give attention and permission to corruption to
No, we didn't mean that.
So if I want to believe corruption is part of the NRM machinery, it is part of the oil that must be able to grease these palms.
Okay. All right.
But again, even before he comes in, I think there is let us put the 2 distinction between NRM and government. Because as much as NRM as a party is in power, but there's a whole spectrum of government that includes all of us. But also look at it this way. How many of us citizens are reporting issues of corruption to the IGG? Or even to police? Because the facilitation of that issue is not only rotating around government leaders, but it's coming from even the wananchis. So I think that the first thing is to have goodwill from the population, to be able to be vigilant and report these issues. I think if you have heard the president speak, he says, you bring me the big fish, bring me those people who actually are doing these things. And I can tell you that from the government standpoint, if you have seen some of the matters being prosecuted, I think you're able to buttress some goodwill that government wants to fight corruption.
All right, let me give Robert a response and then we'll take a short break.
Now, my brother has spoken about the institution which has been fighting corruption, which is true. But like our council said, our advocate said, how many people have a will or faith for Ugandan? You can even pick your sister, your brother.
Yeah, but when you say how many people, please note that that refers to also the government employees.
I agree with you, but the government...
It does not mean the other people outside government.
Madam Priscilla, I want to assure the Ugandans outside there that the challenge we have, very few people are responsible to love our country. Now, somebody is appointed, he's from a career, an advocate, is ABCD, put under corruption, but the man is controlled, the woman is controlled. But what I can give confidence to Ugandans outside there, that the NRM government and His Excellency the President is committed now to put up, the challenge has been monitoring teams at times who have been disappointing us. But I can assure you, for this time, if somebody is sponsoring the money, that's why we have a better prison now. They're going to be dealing with them expeditiously.
Yeah, but you're sending the wrong people to Luzera prison. You're sending the clearly innocent people to Luzera prison. No. In the next manifesto, 2026, 2031, what is NRM's stance or stand against corruption that is going to be implemented, not poko poko?
No bail, no bond. I can assure you that those that are going to tamper with the public funds...
Is that where the windows and the doors of corruption are?
The problem are those that are being got by the money of the government now. Any money here, process people are going to regret. At least for us, we have had an opportunity with the Musée. We had the Musée in Bali. Musée has assured Ugandans, even now assured Ugandans. Of course now, like I told you, with all this kind of peace and stability and everything, there's a lot. They don't steal when there's nothing. Previously, instabilities, challenges, all these people, there was weak institutions. Where would the people make money? Now we have a lot of money in our circulation, but how do we manage that money? The government of NRM, under the clear head leadership of the President Museveni, so we are committed to ensure that those are the temple public funds, even you, please, Madam Priscilla, as one of...
We're going to take a short break and allow you to think about that, and if really, truly, as you, the Mnauganda, listening to this conversation this morning, that is truly a solution that you want to see against corruption in the next 5 years. Breathe on it, I will be returning. We're going to have Councillor Kalwani respond a little bit on something that has been raised. That one of the ways NRM government is going to be fighting corruption in the next 5 years is one of the avenues is through no bail, no bond, as had been stated by Robert Webale here earlier. And constitutionally, how does this reflect on us as a country?
I think that for me is a dangerous narrative to say no bail, no bond, because it's a constitutional guaranteed right. For me, bail is a constitutional guaranteed right. Of course, the discretion is up to the court to whether to grant it or not to grant it. But it's a constitutional guaranteed right. But for me, the issue now is it's not about whether one is granted bail or not. It is the fast-tracking the investigations into the allegations of corruption and ensuring that that person is prosecuted timely so that it is dealt with very, very timely. Okay. So the issue of bail and bond, I think those are constitutional rights. We cannot...
Which timely is still a very big issue in the judiciary corridors in the country right now. However, let's talk about what would be then the catastrophe that would be ahead of us as a country if this was actually an implemented tool. No bail, no bond.
Again, I don't want to go into the discussion of no bail, no bond. I think really we would be going into a different kind of discussion. So for me, the issue is that bail is a constitutionally guaranteed right.
Okay.
The discretion is up to the court to give you bail or not. And that the terms, the court always lays out the terms. And the issue of corruption, you realize that they have a whole division of anti-corruption court. Again, that is in the good spirit of ensuring that these matters are dealt with very fast and timely. Okay. So for me, the underlying issue is investigating those cases and ensuring that they're prosecuted timely.
All right. Also allows to investigate the policy and decentralization as well as service delivery failure, so far linking it to infrastructure development, especially for rural urban growth. In terms of laws, policies and frameworks, I think we are there. Local Government Act, decentralization, poverty reduction strategies, all designed to actually move services closer to the people. But if we were to break it down, allow me to start with Sefoma, who's on the other side of the opposition. On paper, everything looks like Uganda's decentralization should be reducing inequality. What are the realities that you have seen on ground?
Thank you so much. That is a tricky one. Decentralization is supported by the Constitution of Uganda, as a policy, Article 176, 178. And of course for Kampala, the misfortune is that Kampala has a KCCA Act, which of course operationalized Article 5. And that means that Kampala does not have the benefits of decentralization like the rest of Uganda, because Kampala itself as a city is under the administrative grip of the central government. So it might not be advantage enough, it might not be lucky enough to discuss Kampala like we might discuss the other places outside Uganda. But of course you realize that the government's intention of decentralizing was to be able to bring services closer to the people. The other thing that the government is developing right now is the policy of opening cities. It looks like the creation of districts, that type of districts is actually now trying to phase out. We have 147 districts. There's one which was just opened recently, somewhere around, I think, in Teso region. And now the next phase is actually going to cities. People are now claiming that they actually need cities. We have 10 cities, Uganda, 11 cities now. Uganda created 10 cities in 2010, and now that makes it 11. If the intention of government is to bring services to the people through districts and then cities, then of course that might be good. But when you look at the amount of corruption still, you're coming back to the discussion of corruption, then you might be able to say that some of the achievements that are intended to be benefiting the people are being frustrated by the amount of corruption around. But I want to believe that if decentralization were a policy that can be able to bring services to the people, then of course the government would need to give a lot more money to fund the services. Districts survive on 3 grants: equalization, then conditional grants, and unconditional grants. But of course, you know, the challenge is certain grants that they limit how much policy options are available to districts. For instance, if a district, of course, has to be able to rely on government for certain services, then it might be a problem where the district cannot be able to go beyond the amount of grants available. You also remember that we do not have graduated tax. It was abolished as a political promise, consequent upon the conflict between Dr. Kizza Besigye and Yoweri Kaguta Museveni in 2001. So now that money cannot come. Now districts have little options to fund their activities. The districts of Uganda do not have that capacity to go into contracts and then get money through World Bank, so they might have that constraint. So the people of Uganda might not be able to get services for which a decentralization body like a local government must be able to offer them. So that's the problem. So the other thing they must be able to survive on, for instance, if it is a municipality, for instance, or if it is a city, for instance, then they can be able to survive on youth made. Because there is that support for municipalities and cities, which has been supported together with the World Bank, that has been giving them some kind of help. Okay. This one consequently makes it easier for government, of course, I mean for districts to be able to get some good roads, then some good traffic, some good lights, then water. That support, of course, has been coming, and even refugee areas. But the problem is, as long as there isn't enough that can be able to support the decentralization, then of course there might be a problem.
Working with what we have existing currently, what would be the solutions you'd offer?
To be able to
ensure that as the system is right now, the decentralization system as it is right now, what would be some of the solutions to improve on service delivery?
I would boldly say that of course the government needs to add a little more money to fund the districts more. I would boldly say. Okay. But the funny thing is that of course this money is given according to formulas that are established in the Constitution and then the Local Government Act and then the KCCA Act. So it might not be able to work out exactly well as you might expect. Right. But I think I'll be able to propose that government needs to give districts more and support them, because these are the core agents that work on behalf of the government, where the people actually
allow me to engage with Council. Decentralization model, has it broken down?
For me, it has worked. Partly just to pick up from what he's saying, you realize that there are districts, after the financial year, money still goes back to the government coffers. which have not been utilized. Look through the procurement processes of those districts. I think that there is underutilization of monies given by the central government. You look at Auditor General's reports.
Yeah, but there's so many factors that actually lead to, you know, that money that you're referring to.
Yes.
The money comes in late. So if it has come in late at the end of the financial year, how am I supposed to deliver on, the mandate that I have, on the commitments that I have, in order to then, of course, the rightful thing is take it back and then it comes back in the next financial year.
You see, as a district, there's a planning department for each district.
True.
Now, it is up to that planning department to ensure that if, for example, let's say you have procurements to be made in this financial year, why don't you begin plan ahead of time? That when money comes in, you kickstart the process.
Yeah, but you know, but there's budgetary papers, the frameworks, all this is done in time. But the breakdown in funding is not in time.
The procurement cycle is so clear.
Yes.
At what time do we begin the procurement cycle? I think that is so clear.
And every district.
So every district, because this is the thing they have been doing every year, year in, year out, and of course it looks to be very predictable.
If you identify a need for a district, and that need is for this financial year, and money has been released, what stops the district from initiating procurement?
So if the money has been released in May and the financial year closes in June, how does the district
I don't think that for me is the spirit within which that is done.
Okay, Robert, allow me to give you the mic to speak to that.
We need first, thank you, Madam President. We need first of all to understand the practical role, the practical of centralization, practice of the centralization. Okay. Power goes to NEBI. The chairman is the one in charge, and like my advocate said, the centralization is the biggest challenge. You'll find that people thought, you know, any government is very good. What you demand is what they give you. People said we must take power, service to the common person, the district. You remember the Chairman Service Commission, from that very area. The Chairman of from that area. I worked in Balis as a RCC. Once the town clerk and the chairman, the mayor is not on good terms, this money, they will take time, councilman sit to approve for those minutes in every district. Now, those internal conflicts affects the implementation of the program which is coming on the road. I can give an example of Sorongo district. There is already 1 billion on the account because they have never agreed on how to spend this money. Why?
Okay. So I'm coming. No, you're going to answer your question, but just to, because I have a colleague who's joining us after, so I want us to close this conversation by asking: is it the funding structure we need to address? Is it the appointment system? Is it the political control or the local government?
Implementation.
Implementation and the political challenge. Like why the president says in the political, even in Bali City where I worked and this other districts here. If the mayor is not in terms with the town clerk or the cow, the challenge is that the people who, and there's a lot of political egos in those areas.
So that's political control.
Yeah, but the money comes.
What is
implementation?
Should it be addressing the funding structure or the political control or appointment system or the local government over local governments?
I've been distracted by this gentleman, but of course
Sorry, we're trying to see where we can really, what needs to be addressed in order to then ensure that at local government level there's better service delivery, especially infrastructure related. So what do we deal with? The funding structure, the appointment of system, or what we know as the political control?
I think the systems are in place. We may not be able to question so much about the structure of the local government system, unless we are saying we are going to throw it away and then bring maybe federal system. That is a big discussion. I think that is okay. The issue resolves basically around funding. Local governments need as much money as possible because they are the core, and they are the closest to the people of Uganda, because by virtue of saying that you're taking services with the people, you need to give them as much support as possible to deliver on the promises.
Okay. All right. Karan?
Again, for me, the issue is the issue of implementation. If as long as we have the goodwill from the local government to implement, because government does release the budgets, but if you can have timely implementation of these policies, and also making sure the money works and does what's supposed to be done, I think for me we're good to go.
Well, gentlemen, thank you so much. And the submission of implementation by the two gentlemen actually draws it to that, if it was something that we were picking votes on. However, we earlier asked ourselves a question, then whose role is it to implement? That's where we leave it, being joined by our colleague who is in one of the wonderful sunny parts of the country this morning, and that is the one and only Rashul Adid, who's giving us a political climate update. Good morning to you, Rashul. All right, he'll be joining us more updates across the region with our various correspondents. This brings us to the end of our Kickstarter this morning.
We're coming to you live from Koboko district. Today we want to center on a conversation focusing on this ongoing campaigns and the political time. All aware that counting right from today, we're roughly left with only 7 days for the citizens of the country to decide on who is going to lead them in the next 5 years. And of course here you're talking about right from head of state up to local government level. Now one thing that I need to let you know is that the political situation and environment here has continued to be electric and intensifying ahead of these polls. Yesterday I interacted with a number of politicians. There are already allegations of intimidation. You talk about threatening of lives and also money in circulation, which is against the Electoral Commission guideline. Already allegations are coming on ground this morning. I'm delighted to be joined by the District SC5 chairperson of Koboko District, that is Mr. Mambo Ashraf. He happens to be unopposed, but it seems there are issues surrounding the ongoing campaigns for the woman MP race, but also on his side. Good morning.
Good morning, Aditi. It's my pleasure to join you this morning.
Can you tell us what is the political situation right here in Koboko?
I think the political tension in Koboko is a bit tense, with a lot of issues surrounding the politics. But basically on the presidential candidate, we have want to assure the country that we are securing the president, Excellency Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, massively as in Koboko, and I think as West Nile as at large. But we are experiencing a lot of tense in the woman member of parliament candidates. Of course, we have 4 candidates. We have one in NUP and we have one in TFF. Then we have NRM and also independent candidate. And the tension is between the independent candidate, that's Taban Sharifa Ate, and the flag bearer, Papan Shauta, who happens to be the elder sister to Hajat Medina Naham. And indeed, as you stated earlier on, the whole politics in Koboko, I think it has become like money versus the truth. And that's why we have challenges. And that's why I'm deriving my threats. The RRDC is on my back, trying to do all possible means to ensure that I'm assassinated, I'm killed, all attempts that they're trying to make. And even the NRM chairman, and this is angering the whole community because they know who I am. I don't support what is wrong. And that's why we are beginning to have our challenges. Indeed, the threats are many to us, and the issue of money in circulation, I think the whole money of West Nile, I can say maybe the whole money of NRM secretaries is being dumped here in Koboko. Day and night is about dish money. The director of finance, even at night, midnight, 10 p.m., whatever night, moves all in the villages, distribute money to groups in the village, in the border stages, youth who are in the community, and that turns the whole political atmosphere to be so awkward. And I think that's not the direction that we need to do. We find all villages are participating in football tournaments, and every village is being given 200,000. The winners are given 350,000. And you find the motorcycles have been secured, 10 motorcycles have been secured in the names of the flag bearer of NRM. And you see, if you want to do this, let it be across the country that the tournament is. What is special in Koboko, that all these are brought in Koboko. It's just because they would want to fail Honorable Taban Sharifa Ate. She came independent, she's a pure NRM. She came independent because of what happened in the primary elections. But that's now the community has said, indeed, they have realized their mistake. The Honorable Ate had been leading all the parishes in the sub-counties, majority of them, but the declaration was not on her favor. So they want to confirm in the general election that truly, whether she passed or not, and that's where the tension is coming from.
Maybe, Chairman, if I can only, maybe we shall continue with this conversation in the afternoon. For now, this is really what I can confirm for you right here in Koboko. Already allegations of intimidation, you talk about life threats, abductions are ongoing. Now, one thing that I also need to let you know is that there are already allegations that some of the candidates who come from either National Unity Platform or the People's Front Party are being bought off. These allegations that I cannot independently confirm on air, but of course we shall keep digging this story deeper to understand what is currently on ground. For now, allow me to head to my colleague, that is Stephen Bide, to tell us what is in Uganda's capital, Kampala, right there. Stephen Bide, kindly, if you can hear me, take up from where I've stopped right here in West Nile region, specifically